Alright, well, after a lot of procrastination, I finally bit the bullet and tore into the Camaro. I'm not sure what I've shared with you up to this point. It just smokes like a James Bond car. So this has been actually years in the making, so I've long overdue. So I finally decided to tear into it and drop this motor out and get it rebuilt. So we're going to be doing this ourselves. I didn't record the whole process of getting to this point. You know, I've got the motor out now, dropped out. I did the whole subframe. I was just, I've been sick and I was just too tired to try to video the whole process. So rather than making this a whole tutorial, I'm going to try to share some steps along the way, some useful information that could be helpful that I never really could find when I was doing my research. So what I'm going to do right now is walk around the subframe with the motor and transmission still on it. All the hoses and everything are still there. I just disconnected everything and dropped it out of the car. And what I want to do is to show you all the different things that I had to disconnect. Some of the stuff that was less obvious, I forgot a couple of things as I was dropping it out that I had to go back and lower it back down and pull it out. So I never could find anybody that shared that information in detail. So I wanted to do that and show you exactly when I still have the car and the motor pretty close proximity to show you what you got to disconnect to get this thing dropped out. Wasn't too bad. I definitely don't think I would want to do it without the lift. So the lift just makes it so much easier. If you don't have one, certainly possible to do it, but I don't know how you're going to get the car up high enough because as you can see, the motor, you could drop it down another foot or foot and a half to get it lower, but unless you can get the car really high, it's going to be difficult to get it out from under it. So let me dive in. I'm going to go all the way around the unit that's the subframe assembly that's dropped down, and I'll try to point out every hose and fitting and electrical connector that I had to disconnect and where it goes and the little description of what I found. So let's get in there and take a look. Alright, so let's go up in the, just kind of start over here by the passenger side suspension. You obviously have to take off the top of the strut or the shock mount that goes up into here. There's a cap nut on there, let me find it. So this goes up on top of there. You've got this plate that retains it and then this nut, and you do have to hold, there's a little cap on that, but you do have to hold the center of that right here. That made it a little bit trickier, so you had to hold that in place, but with the curvature of this, it was hard to get a regular end wrench in there and hold it because you're kind of at an angle. So there's probably some better way to do that, but I didn't have it. But anyway, I got them off. This one doesn't come off because that would of course release the whole spring tension, but that shaft sticks through that plate on the top and then the nut on top of that. So you can hold this while you turn the nut. So that comes out, and then of course it just drops down out of there. You got the ABS sensor is connected in right here on the side of the front caliper. This one bolt out, and that just slides out of there. And you just got to kind of tuck it out of the way. I just kind of poked it into there, but just tuck it up out of the way so it doesn't get snagged while you drop it down. Then the other thing I did, so I didn't have to disconnect any brake lines whatsoever, so I won't have to bleed these at all, is I took the whole caliper off just with these two bolts. And of course that comes off right here, these two bolts here, and then that slides off. And then I just tied it up with some wire, so use something. This might be a little small, but seems to be holding it just fine. But tie that up out of the way so it doesn't get snagged either. I did have to pull off one of the hose clips that was on this nut right here to get that disconnected. So really just those two things, ABS and the brake caliper, or excuse me, three things. So brake caliper, ABS, and the top of the strut mount. And then all the suspension can drop right down out of there. You don't have to disconnect anything else. Now moving in towards the engine. Now there's going to be a few things that I'll probably need to show you once I get the car down off the lift. I'll fire up the camera back up and show you from the top side what I had to disconnect. So right here on the side of the motor, there's a couple of fuel lines. This is like a vapor return, I think. And then this is the pressurized fuel line that pressurizes the fuel rails. So that's the pressurized fuel. You have to pop this clip off, and then you have to use those little fuel line clips that go around the hose and poke up in there to release it. So two fuel lines.
There's a bunch of, let's see how many I got here. 1, 2, 3, 4 wiring harness connectors. I'll have to show you exactly where those were. 2 of them were on the side of the ECU. I'll probably be able to see it from up under here. Let me see if I can get up in there. Okay, so 2 of them come out of here. The other 2 are up high, and you won't be able to see those until I get up top. But these were fairly easy to get out. And it just made a lot more sense to me than try to disconnect all the engine harness off the top of the engine with it still in the bay. So all I really had to do is pull these 4 harnesses out, and then I just zip tied them up to the top to keep them tucked in while it dropped down out of the chassis. Down here there's the heater hose lines. These 2 come up and they go right across the top. So I'll show you those up top too when we get up in there. But they come over the top here, and then they just go around right down the top of the engine and then plug into a couple of fittings on the firewall. So those just pull right off. There was nothing maybe in mind they had already been off, but they were just laying there, so I just had to lift them up and drape them over the top of the fender. There was one hose up in here somewhere. Where is it at? Oh, right up in here. I don't know if you can see that. I got my finger on the tip of it. That, I believe that's the one that went across to the intake plumbing right by the air cleaner. I've got an aftermarket one, and that came across and plugged into the pipe that's connected up to the throttle body. So that was a little hose that came off of here. So that's where that was. That popped off. Of course, the lower radiator hose had to come out, and I just went ahead and took it off both sides and just took the whole pipe out. But this here goes to that fitting there, the thermostat in there. There is a battery connection. This one here, it goes under the motor, attached to the subframe, and it comes up and it connects into the big fuse and relay box that's up under there, that up on top. I'll have to show you that when I get up in there. Okay, down here, I think these are transmission cooler lines. Yeah, these 2 right here. These are transmission cooler lines, and they were connected in right here to these 2. Had to pop those off. They just have a little clip here that popped out with a little pick, little wire thing that popped out, and then I was able to just pull them apart. Fairly straightforward on that. And then right up here, this is part of the power steering. I just put an earplug in there to plug it up. That connects right to the side of the radiator up here. It goes over to the power steering, I think. Let's double check it just so I'm not lying. Yeah, that comes over here to the steering rack, but it just goes across and it's all connected up here. So I just left it on and disconnected it from the side of the radiator right here. So that popped off pretty easy. And of course that stays connected to the subframe. Moving around towards the front, there's another look at those transmission cooler lines right here. Then of course on the front of the motor we got the upper radiator hose. You know, that of course went up over the top there. I think I took it out too. And of course your intake plumbing for their air filter comes off of there. Another hose right here. This is coolant, and it goes back to the transmission, I think. Let's follow it just so you can get a good idea of what's what. Let's see. Yeah, that goes under here. It goes back to this thing here. I don't exactly know what that's for, but that I will probably learn as I dissect this motor. But it goes up into this assembly here. And then that comes back out right back into the engine block. So some kind of a cooler, perhaps an oil cooler, water heat exchanger unit. Back to the front. Okay, this one here, this is an air conditioner Freon line that goes up to the side of the condenser, the radiator up in here. See if I can spot it. Might have to Yeah, you won't be able to see it. It's way up on the side of the radiator up in here. We'll have to show you that one also when I get the car down. But this one leads down and it goes across over to the AC compressor. The other one comes off the AC compressor, this other big one here. I've got it just zip tied up. That comes down over there back to the compressor as well. This one actually connects it right up there, connects to that, and there's a small line that comes down and leads along the top of the frame rail. That you don't have to disconnect, and that little tiny one connects up in there, but it just runs parallel to the frame, so you have to take that out. But the big one popped off where you see that nut up there with that rag stuck in the pipe. That's where this connects. All right, and then the other one, there's a AC pressure switch on the end on the side of this line too. Had to pop that out. So that's an electrical switch, pressure switch. And then right in the bottom, the power steering reservoir line, I had to pop that off. So yeah, the pump must put pressurized power steering fluid out this one through the radiator, and then it comes back down and then goes back into the power steering pump here on that one. So anyway, I had to disconnect that. That line stayed up top. Moving around to the driver's side, another look at that one Freon line, and then the other Freon line up here. I just got them zip tied up. Also have the main battery line. This is the one that's on the driver's side firewall where the big battery connection lug is that comes from the trunk battery. Disconnected that, and it's got two lines that comes off of it. One of these goes over to the starter, and the other one goes over to that line that we had on the other side that connects into that fuse and relay box. That fuse relay box is right up there. One electrical line here. This, I believe, was for the this is for the mass flow meter, I believe. That was plugged in over here. Just have that draped up on top of the motor there. While I was in here wrestling around, I did pull one bolt out that I didn't need to, that I later realized. So I can spot it here. That little clamp right there, it's supposed to be bolted into that hole. I unbolted that thinking that line below it. I don't know if I can get my, you can see it. Anyway, that line that it's holding, that is part of that other one up front. Yeah, that one that went up front that came back to this heat exchanger unit, that goes through that, and I was thinking that had to come out, but it didn't. I just had to pull that fitting off the front. So that, I pulled that bolt out of there and didn't need to. Don't know why I'm showing you that, I guess just so that you don't think that that one has to come out either, but that could have stayed, and it was kind of a nuisance to get out too. The steering was on here, just pulled that one bolt out, and then just had to hammer that back up in there. It came out pretty easy. I sprayed it with some WD-40, loosened it up a little bit, but that came off okay. A couple of these have little clips on them that were attached to the fender in certain spots, so keep an eye on that. Make sure you get those disconnected. Suspension, same thing as the other side. Got the ABS sensor there that I pulled out, just tucked it up away just so to keep it out of the way, and then pulled off this brake caliper as well. That one over here, of course, is on here. And same thing with the strut. That comes out like the other side. I didn't point this out over there. There's the radiator. That did start falling down with the whole assembly, but it was still attached to a lot of stuff up top. So I didn't realize this at first. I figured it would stay up, but it didn't. So once it started, I noticed that it was falling. We pushed it back up, and I put some zip ties at the top to hold it up, and I'll show you that when I get up on top. These little bushings here just fit into these holes. They're not bolted in or anything, it just sits there. But you do have to retain that radiator up, otherwise it'll come down with the subframe. There's a total of 6 bolts holding in the main subframe. There's one here. There's a guide pin that helps you line it up. But there's a big bolt here, and a big bolt here, and then the same 3 on the other side. Those are the 3 main ones holding it in. and then the transmission crossmember. I'll show you that in a minute. Now, as we were lowering it, there was one that I forgot. This one right here. This is the clutch hydraulic line. Didn't catch that one at first, so we started dropping that one down. Unfortunately, there was a bit of slack on that, so I don't think it hurt anything. But that connects in right here, and I had missed that one. So we caught it soon enough that didn't break anything, so we lifted it, dropped it back down on there, and I popped that out. Pretty easy to get out of there. There's a little clip that goes around that, and then it popped right out. Lost a little bit of fluid, not a lot. All the oxygen sensors and all that stuff, this is all connected in with that main engine harness that disconnect with the big plugs that I took off, so you don't have to take that off. I did have to remove the front section of the exhaust right here, and there's an oxygen sensor in that which plugs in here. There's one on either side. But the front one stayed on. Let me grab this shifting linkage. I just disconnected the drive shaft from here, and I didn't pull all this stuff out. I didn't pull the whole drive shaft out. I thought I had it far enough because they just part it back. There's a little bit of play in there because there's a rubber bushing in the middle. But I got it popped out of here because it does poke into that. But I got it out, and I had it kind of propped up here a little bit. And then I got up top and I disconnected the shift boot and all that. But I didn't take into account that it's stuck back so far from the transmission, because it connects in right here, but it comes back quite a ways. And as I was dropping it down, it hooked on top of the drive shaft, so that wouldn't come out. So, kind of mid-drop, we had to disconnect these 3 linkages here, which actually turned out to be pretty easy. There is 2 of them here that just kind of pivot in that. And then there's a little clip. Let me grab that clip and show you what it looks like. See if I can show you what this looks like. So here's the shift linkage for the gear shifter. There's just 4 bolts from the top holding that in. I think they were 10 millimeters. 2 there and 2 there. But this thing, the linkage fits around that shaft, and then these other 2 go in the sides there. Now, I can't hold this all at the same time, so let me show you how that goes together. So when you put those linkages in here, you have these little clips. Looks like this. So you push that back in there like that, and then this thing pushes down, and it locks into this little hole right here. So you can see there's a little, you can see that there's a little tab right there. That little tab pokes into the other side of this hole. See that hole right there? That little tab pokes into the other side of it. So to get it out, so this will normally be pushed in all the way, and it'll snap in, and it won't go up. Oh, sorry. So normally this will be down all the way, and it'll snap in. And to get it out, you lift it up as far as it will go, and it'll go up just far enough to see in that hole. And then I got a little pick, or a little tiny screwdriver, and I just poked it in there, which pushes out that little pin because it flexes. You can see how it's flexing a little bit. It pushes out far enough to that this releases, and then you can pull this up, and then you just slide this out, and then that released that. So it's the exact same thing on the other side. It just does it from the front. This one goes into the back. This one goes in the front. So there's 2 of these. That popped right out really easy. Now it may not have been that easy when it was up in there, so probably was still a little bit easier to drop it down a little bit. I could have pulled all this exhaust out, pull off this heat shield, and then pull the whole drive shaft out, but that would have been a big pain. This actually wasn't too bad once I figured out how these little clips came out. Okay, so the other one is for the actual control horn or control rod that moves the shifter. It has the same kind of clip, little C-clips on either end of this thing. I just had to pop off one side, and that thing was slid through there to hold it on. So I popped off the one, and then just got a little screwdriver or something and hammered out the pin. And once I got that out, it fell out and came right off. And then, because I was just in there holding that like that. So those 3 things are pretty easy to get out once I figured out how they moved. and then just make sure you don't lose those little clips. Okay, and then there's of course 2 bolts on either side of the transmission cross member. There is 2 going up into the bottom into this transmission mount. I initially started disconnecting those and then realized it'd make more sense because as I put the jack down onto this, I first had the jack stand on the transmission and it started pushing the transmission up, and I didn't like that because it was pushing it up into the car. So I redid that, put the bolts back into the cross member under here, and then I put the jack under the cross member, and then once I got it down, I could loosen up these 4 bolts on the side and just leave that as a way to hold on to the thing and drop it down. Nothing else back here that I had to disconnect. Of course, the drive shaft. These bolt style was a little funky. Let me grab the one I had to get off. So this is the bolt. There's 3 of these in here. It's got a big Torx bit on that side, and then it goes through to the other side. I didn't have the exact right size. What I did use was the T55. It was pretty snug, but there's a little bit of play in it. So I don't know if a T60 would fit or if a T55 is what it's supposed to be, but there's a little bit of play. Fortunately, it wasn't so much that it was a problem. I was still able to get it loosened up and taken off of there. These bolts are locking, so as you get them in there far enough, it does bind up and it's really tight, so they can't loosen up on their own. So there was 3 of those in there, and then that drive shaft came out. And in my case, I was able to just leave it up in here, so it's just hanging there. So moving around here, another oxygen sensor for that little exhaust stub that was here, the cat. Got your 3 more bolts for the subframe there, and I think that was pretty much it. There is off the radiator cap, there is one line that runs over to the engine block that I had to disconnect. Oh yeah, right here. So that one off the top of the radiator cap that was going back, that goes to this. And that just drops, looks like it drops straight down into the block. Oh, it does go back across that way. That little one there, I forgot about that one. I went by the front the first time. But that connects up into that one there that you can see off the top of the radiator fill cap. Alright, I got the car body down off the lift and wheeled out into the driveway so I can make room for inside the garage bay to start dismantling the motor. I wanted to wrap up the walk around of the different connection points for hoses and electrical and plumbing while I still have it sitting on the stand. I did remember one thing that I didn't talk about in the first little walk around. There is a bolt right here. There's a ground strap on that, and I'll show it to you under the hood. But there's a ground strap that just goes a few inches right here over to the side of the fender well on the passenger side. Let me show you where that is. So I'll just start with that ground wire that we were talking about. But I've got it tucked into here. So this big ground strap right here, that was going to that bolt. And it just goes over to this bolt right here on the side. See if we can get a little better light in here. That'll help. But anyway, so yeah, there's a bolt right there. That was strapped to the side of the engine. We'll just walk around. Here's the heater hoses that I was talking about. They were just attached to the side of the engine over here, and they just ran over across the top of the motor and tied into the heater core over there. Right down there are the 2 fuel lines that we were talking about. Walking around here, we were chatting about the electrical harnesses. So one of them is right here. You just have to that's a totally quick disconnect, unplug that, pull it off. The 2 in the ECU are right here. 2 plugs on that. The 4th one is inside of this. You have to release these clips. There's 4 clips around this thing, 2 on each side, and it is right on the back side of this. So you actually loosen up that bolt right there, and then when you pull this top off, that it looks similar to these plugs, but it's on the back side of this, so you have to lift that up out of there, and it's on the bottom side of that. The other one's staying put. That battery cable that was coming across, hello kitty, the battery cable that was coming across, that goes up to this post right here, so you got to pull that off. Okay, moving around here, can't really see it, you know, because it's on the bottom side, and I showed you that, but that power steering line's down there. There's the two transmission cooler lines. This breather, this was the one that went to that little fitting on top of the engine, on kind of on the driver's side. Here's where I hooked up the couple of zip ties to hold the radiator up, because it's usually stuck up, these pins are poked up into these holes there, and it just kind of floats there. But as I lowered the subframe, the radiator wanted to go with it, and of course it's still attached with different hoses and stuff, so that was a problem. So we lifted it back up. I put a zip tie on each of those points to hold it up. Hopefully that's gonna hold for a little while I do this work. Okay, walking around to the driver's side. Upper radiator hose, I pulled that off. That one's pretty straightforward. Here's the other air conditioner fitting that I was talking about. That one is still attached to the engine, and I just have it tied up. This other one here, this one here I've got tied up. This is for the power steering reservoir. That's the return. So the power steering fluid comes in that side, comes up through, comes out of here, back up into the reservoir. And this was the pressure switch that was on that air conditioner line. Moving around this way, of course there was the air box was right in here, so that got pulled out. It had the tube on it, intake tube. This is this car, as you I'm sure know, that has the battery in the trunk. This is the main battery cable going back to the trunk, and you had to pull this bolt out to get that main battery cable off that was going here. That was, one of them was attached to the alternator, and one was to the starter, and then it also went across over back to that side. Moving back, there's the steering. We talked about that already, but that's that was fairly easy to get off. Just the one bolt there, right here, and then just was able to slide that up and off. The other air conditioner line right here, that's still attached to the engine assembly. And then there's the clutch hose. That was the one that I forgot when I started lowering it down, but caught it early enough it didn't break anything, I don't think. And that's pretty much it up in this part of the car. I think I showed you the bottom stuff. Down there you can see the drive shaft. This one does not have the torque tube. I guess that's a newer, like Gen 6 or something Camaro thing. Or maybe it's just for the higher performance one, I don't know. And then of course here's the top for the strut mounts. I think that's everything I can think of. If I think of something else, I'll add it to the conversation.